Yeah, I think it does, yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, I do.
I think so. I think it's just becoming more and more difficult for the younger generation to enter the market.
Probably for a lot of people that would be the case.
It's just so hard now to actually get into the market. It's almost just out of reach for most people to even think about.
There's no hiding it. The Australian property market right now is a rocket. The value of Australia's entire property market has hit $9.2 trillion. For reference, that's 7 times the GDP of the entire country. In 2001, if you wanted to buy your average middle-ring house in Sydney, it'd set you back a whopping $291,250. That same house today would cost you $1,330,000, and our wages just aren't growing anywhere near as fast. But what makes a house worth what it's worth?
So let's talk about how supply and demand works using a really simple example. On the right, we have the supply of houses that are available for sale. And we also have the people that are searching to buy a house, the demand. So what would happen if there was an increase in demand? Well, that would be more people that are searching for a house. What that means, when you go to an auction, you're going to be competing against more people, and so probably what we'll see is higher prices. So what about an increase in supply? Well, let's build 2 new houses. Now, we've got fewer people per house that are searching, and so when you go to auction, you're going to be competing with fewer people, and probably we'll find that the house is more affordable.
I'm Gemma, this is Chris. We are currently renting.
It's definitely something we want to do. It's just the hurdles that come with buying a house.
I always thought, yeah, it's really hard to get in. It's really expensive to buy right now, but we've said that for years and people are still doing it. So when the time comes, we'll manage. And now the time's come and you go, oh wow, it really is very hard, very expensive.
So that's when you sort of start to think, okay, you know, our radius of searching doesn't go to 15 kilometres around where we are at the moment, it goes to 50 kilometres around where you are. So you're starting to look on a bigger scale. You're looking at grants, you're looking at
you're starting to go, could the kids maybe share a room, and we don't need 3 bedrooms,
exactly.
Maybe we don't need an ensuite.
So you really start to compromise on that sort of thing just to get your foot in the door.
So we know supply and demand dictates the price of housing. This is how all markets work. However, housing is a little more complicated than most markets because most of us can't buy a house by ourselves. But why exactly do we need help from the bank? And why are mortgages such an important part of housing affordability?
So we talked earlier about supply and demand, and this is how all markets work, including housing. But housing differs from something like apples for a really important reason. When you buy an apple, you eat it, it's gone. You buy a house, you live in it, and you can continue to live in it for as long as you like. This really matters because you can't afford to buy a lifetime supply of housing with the income that you're earning today. And this is where a mortgage comes in. So how does a mortgage work? Well, you need to buy a house, say $1 million, but you've only got $200,000, and you need to borrow another $800,000 from the bank. They will lend that to you, and then you will pay that back to them with interest over a period of typically 25 to 30 years. If you could afford, say, $1,000 a week for a mortgage as a round number, if the interest rate was 2%, you'd be able to take out a mortgage of about $1 million. If the interest rate was 6%, you could only take out around 2/3 of that. So what have conditions been like for the past 6 months? In short, it's been very competitive and very tough for buyers to get into the market. Why? Well, firstly, there just hasn't been a lot of stock on the market for people to choose from. Second, we've seen a lot of government policies come into place. Things like Home Builder that are helping people get into the market. Finally, we're seeing record low interest rates, which means that everyone can borrow more, and that's helping push up housing prices.
I think it's drummed into us pretty early. You know, the way in which you do things going forward into your adult life. And buying a home is very much one of those things. So it's sort of, you know, you grow up hearing about how it's all meant to go, and then you don't feel very supported when you get to that point in this day and age when you're supposed to be buying your own home. I mean, it's the dream. It's the dream to own your own home.
So the runaway Australian property market doesn't seem to have been caused by any singular thing, rather compounding economic factors. In all market conditions, there are always winners and losers. The fact that house prices continue going up is far from being a problem for some Australians. In fact, most Australians actually benefit from rising house prices. 60% of Australians own the property they live in, but that's not the whole story.
Over the past 2 years, the wealth of Australian households has increased nearly $3 trillion, according to the ABS. That's a huge number. To put it in context, that's more than 100,000 per person in Australia. And nearly 2.2 trillion of that, so 2/3 of it, has come from increases in home values.
Property price growth isn't bad per se. The problem exists where you've got some people in the market benefiting from price growth and some people outside of the market who are missing out. So for people who've been in the market for several years, they've probably seen their properties increase very substantially. If we look at the last 12 months alone, the median price of a property in Australia's greater capital cities increased by over 20%. This is an incredible level of price growth over just 12 months. And what this means is that wealth has increased substantially for those already in the property market.
We've just sold our property in Melbourne and we have moved to Sale and Sea Spray. We were thinking of doing it in the next 18 months to 2 years, but the house prices went crazy in Melbourne. We bought the block of land for $135,000, I think, and we built the house for $170,000. And we just sold the property for $1.65 million. The gains made on our home mean freedom from debt.
Oh, it's a massive relief. It's nice. It's nice to have everything paid off now.
But what about those outside of the property market? The deposit hurdle's grown. They haven't seen this wealth growth. So there's this growing divide between people who are in and out of the property market.
And these changes have been concentrated among younger households. Home ownership rates have fallen most for households aged under 35. If unaddressed, we risk further entrenching inequality, as rich parents will be able to help their children get into the market, and that won't be available to everyone.
The Australian government seems to acknowledge that young Australians are having a hard time breaking into the market.
Will enable first home owners to buy their home with a deposit of down to 5%.
It's about assisting you buying your first home.
The Morrison government in the end is a government for first home buyers. We're a government for home ownership.
Yeah, look, there's no doubt we've got housing affordability challenges, particularly when you think about, our concentrated population on the eastern seaboard, obviously Melbourne, Sydney and Brisbane. And when you look at those big cities, we have some of the most expensive real estate in the world. So what we've tried to do is help people get over that deposit hurdle. First Home Guarantee and New Home Guarantee are a program that allows you to purchase a home with a 5% deposit. The Commonwealth, we guarantee that 15% portion, and then over time we disappear out of the system. The economic consequences of a number of these programs, are contested. I think the reality is anything we can do to give first home buyers a competitive advantage, I'm very comfortable with.
Whether you bought decades ago or if you bought yesterday, nobody wants their assets to go backwards. Grants and subsidies make it easier for first-timers to break into the market. But what role does government play when it comes to the affordability of housing?
There are a few things that need to happen to ensure that the property market remains accessible. First of all, the supply of new dwellings needs to keep up with population growth. We do see that in markets that have an oversupply of housing, property prices don't rise at those really high speeds that we've seen over the last year. And in fact, what we see is that in some markets where the supply of properties is really high, property prices actually decline. There's no rule that says that property prices have to increase forever. Where we do see property prices increasing, governments have a role in ensuring that those buyers who aren't already in the market have the help that they need to get in.
And what are some ways that people might be able to own their own home affordably?
No, I think it's too expensive.
No idea. Just find some, a mate's bit of land and pitch a tent, but
have to move away, way out into the sticks.
It's getting more and more out of reach for some Aussies to buy a home, with high property prices creating further inequality in the market. And although it seems all doom and gloom, when it comes to affording your own place, there are ways to escape or diminish the effect of rising house prices.
We're in the process at the moment of starting our new build, so we're just reaching contract stage.
We really wanted to get into our first home, and at the time it was either buy pre-existing and not really know what you're going to be spending on a house and getting disappointed and things like that, whereas if we could buy a block of land and build a house, it meant that we had a lot more freedom. There's no sort of bill shock, I guess. If we were to find an equivalent house pre-existing, we just wouldn't have been able to afford it.
Yeah, look, we've definitely seen demand increase, certainly over the last 2 years. The government stimulus has assisted that. But I also think with people spending so much time in their homes in the last 2 years, it's really got them questioning what's important to them in a home and what do I need. So building new increases supply, choice and options for people, and that has a really positive impact on affordability because there's more choice out in the market.
One of the most important things we can do to help make housing more affordable broadly is build more homes. This means increasing densities in the inner city. This means building new homes on the fringes of our outer cities. And it means improving transportation links so that it's easy to live in suburbs further from the city.
Things like restrictions around how land can be subdivided also have a big impact. If you can build more properties on a piece of land, that enables more development.
Look, anything government can do to help, I guess, smooth the lines and improve the process from a planning and approvals perspective so that we're able to deliver more quality homes in the places that they're needed will only have a positive impact on affordability.
So getting a house and land package in an upcoming suburb might be on the cards if you're looking for affordability. But what are some of the other ways to soften the blow of purchasing a house? Maybe something completely different.
Container is an innovative modular housing solution. We use shipping containers and we customise them to suit our customers' requirements. We can turn around a one-bedroom container house for effectively $88,000 ex-factory. That's including all your appliances. If by creating a faster turnaround in terms of housing, a smarter, more well thought out footprint for a building, that we therefore then don't need to have as bigger block sizes. We don't need as bigger houses, which will drive down the price and actually make living in the inner city a little bit more affordable for people who may have been priced out more traditionally.
An affordable house and land package, a home of the future that won't cost $1 million. But what if you still can't afford it?
I think it's really important for first home buyers not to lose hope. The important thing is to think about what are your budget constraints, where can you buy?
Ultimately, it's a personal decision and depends on your circumstances. What matters is this the right house for me? Can I afford it? Where do I want to live? Not what did house prices do last month or what's happening to interest rates this month.
I think Aussies want to own their own home because we like to have that home base. I think we're proud as well. Like, we like to be able to say, hey, this is what I've worked towards. We're hardworking people. Like, we want to be able to showcase the things that we've worked towards and be able to have something to show for it.
I think what's important is that you are able to create the lifestyle that you can envisage with your family. And that, I don't think that necessarily means that you need to have the greatest, the biggest, the best. Our expectation was we wanted to have a nice home, and we wanted to mow the lawns and have a nice car and put our kids in school.
It's pressure from everywhere, pressure from ourselves to secure somewhere, to give our kids a solid foundation and somewhere consistent, and not to have to rip them out of school just because we're moving house, kids.
Grandparents have done it, parents have done it, and you want to do that because
and they want you to do it.
And they want you to do it. It becomes aspirational, I think, too. And
I think, because we've always had a level of independence, and ultimately, for most people, it's sort of driven by a desire to have a place where, they and their family can be themselves.
There are so many unique ways to live in Australia, and you shouldn't feel pressured to buy a home just because everybody else is. The greatest tool we have in the housing market is choice. When you open yourself up to more options, you might find that something a little different was perfect all along.